Demi color isn't just for natural makeup look, it can also be very glamorous as well. So we're going to start off with a line brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and fluff up my eyebrows and use an NB+1. That means that it has a deeper saturation. It's a little bit of a blue based and it is neutral, so this is going to be perfect for shadowing in and filling in our eyebrows. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the sparse little areas. This looks very much skin-like. If you have lighter hair, NV+1 would probably be a better shade for you. But since I have pretty dark eyebrows already, this is going to help me a lot. I'll just go ahead and brush my eyebrows down and fill in any of the bald spots on my eyebrow just to make it look nice and natural and full and create that beautiful shape that we want. And I always brush it out with the spoolie, and you can see it's very minor, but it is a nice big difference and it looks super natural too. I like taking the Seint brow wax and just going in with that just to fluff up my eyebrows and keep them in place. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the shape brush. It is one of my favorites, and I'm going to take NBG and I'm going to go ahead and use this shade as a contour shade. I like using something a little bit more cool tone to go ahead and add more structure into my face and just to give me a little bit more depth and dimension. This shade is perfect for me because I have that orangey yellow undertone. This is going to go ahead and cancel out any of the excess orange tones in my skin and just create a beautiful natural shadow. It also mimics the natural shadow that my contour area already has. I just take a little bit of that NB+1 just to deepen it up a little bit more, just because I really want a lot of structure and shape. Just be careful because these shades are super pigmented, very intense, and you don't want to apply too much. And I'm only applying it strategically in the areas where that shadow is not. You can see the little shadow I have there. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply that around it so that it enhances that little area, but we're not going to add too much makeup onto the area where the shadow already exists, because then things are going to start looking dark and muddy and gross, and we don't want that. That is not the purpose of Demi. This is to create a nice natural shadow to the face, just enhancing what's already there. And I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of that shade and just going to go ahead and contour my forehead as well as my nose. We are going to define the nose a little bit more. I find that really having a nice structured nose makes a big difference with a more glamorous look versus a more natural look. And I love this shade for that nose contour because it just creates that natural shadow once again and really does a good job at sculpting out my nose. You can already see the difference that it's made in my nose and just in my shape, my face structure as well. So then to add a little bit more warmth to our skin, we are going to take NR, and I'm going to go ahead and use that shade, and I'm just going to use the larger side of the shape brush, and we're going to kind of use this almost as a bronzer. So it's kind of like if your contour shade had a little bit more warmth to it. That is what the shade is. It's kind of a toning technique is what we are doing, just to go ahead and add a little bit more tone and dimension into my skin. And it's also just going to go ahead and help to neutralize that contour to make sure that it isn't too ashy and that it goes really well with my skin tone as well. So then I'm just going to go ahead and apply a little bit on the center of my face as well, because once again I just want to add that dimension into our skin. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a shade that has a little bit more of that purpley undertone, because I find that it just does a really good job at toning down the excess yellow in my skin and adding a beautiful, fresh, natural, almost from within blush tone. And we are using the wash brush for that. Then I'm going to go ahead and take 03, and I'm going to use this to tone out the excess color and the shadows on my skin, because as a woman of color, I do get a lot of hyperpigmentation around my mouth. So this just kind of helps to balance that out, to soften it up and to neutralize it just before we go ahead and take our time using the spot brush to filter out any distractions. So I'm taking my favorite shade. This is OY1. And we're going to go ahead and take the spot brush. And I use this shade because underneath my eyes, I have a lot of depth and darkness to it. There's not a lot of saturation, but there is that tiny little bit of excess violet in it. So that's just going to really help to cancel that out and to filter it out to create that beautiful skin-like finish. The point of Demi is to filter out any excess color that you have in your skin. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other eye. I mostly have that like violet tone underneath my eye, right along my waterline. And then I just go ahead and take a little bit of the opposite shade, which is Y01, and I use that just for any darker shades that I don't feel have as much of that saturation as that violet shade that I feel is under my eye. And I just carefully and strategically use the spot brush to go ahead and get rid of any of those reddish violet shades, and then use the spot brush for the darker shades as well. And something that I'm kind of doing here is I'm almost looking in the camera, because I felt like I could see a lot better when I was looking in the camera. You can see how that under eye just looks a lot more toned and evened out. Then we're going to go ahead and get rid of the shadow around my nose. I notice this makes a very big difference in sculpting out my nose and just almost making it appear thinner than what it actually is. So that's why I like to take that OY1 shade and just put that around my nose, because it actually has an excess of violet and a little bit of blue in there. So that's why I use that shade, and it's going to help to brighten up the skin and just make it come more to life. And again, using very little bit of this product, because the point of Demi isn't to make it look like you have makeup on. It's to enhance the natural skin texture that you have without showing the texture of makeup. So it's almost like a stain is how I see it, where it's very, very light, very, very thin, and a little bit goes a very long way. So we're going to go ahead and finish filtering out around my nose. Again, I am being very strategic and just looking for those spots that look kind of almost red, but they're like a very dark, deep red. That's a violet that has a little bit of an excess of blue as well. And just because my skin is very, very pigmented, I know that there is some excess blue in the distraction areas. Usually any of your distraction areas, 9 times out of 10 are always going to be dark, so they're always going to have some kind of a blue undertone. So we're just going to continue to just kind of nitpick now. I usually don't do this with my regular Demi application, but since we want something a little bit more glamorous, we want to go ahead and focus a little bit more on any little spots that we see, any little acne scars, any little freckles, any little sunspots that we may have. I have a few around my nose. I have a few little sunspots on my cheeks from living in Florida and not wearing sunscreen at a younger age like I should have. So I just go ahead and use a mix between that OY1 and the Y01. The more orangey shade is the one that I use for more vibrant colors, while the less orangey shade is the one that I use for more darker colors. So here I'm just really focusing on this little acne scar that I have on my cheek, and I'm being very, very strategic, starting in the darkest spot with that 03 shade, which is going to get rid of any darker, deeper distractions, while the other shades that have a 1 behind it usually are going to help with lighter distractions. So the more saturated and deeper your distraction is, the higher of a saturation you're going to want to use in your filter shade to go ahead and filter that out and cancel it completely. So then I'm working on my chin here. These are very light distractions, so again I'm going to use one that has a saturation level of 1 versus the saturation level of 3. But once I get to this area here, you can see that these are freshly picked at acne scars. So I'm using an R05, and the reason why is because I notice that my acne scars almost have like a mulchiness to it. There's that excess green in it, but I know that they're still dark. There's no saturation really to it. So I'm using an orange to cancel out the excess blue, and I'm using a level 5 because it is a deeper and darker distraction. And with things like this, you just want to take your time. You might need to add a little bit more sometimes and just keep on building up on it, making sure that you're just touching the darkest points first and then kind of working from there, stepping back and reanalyzing. And you can see how this really did a great job at really filtering out my little acne scars that I had on my chin. You can barely even see it. And if you do it correctly, it won't show any texture and it won't be icy. If it's icy, it means that it's too light. So then we're going to go back in with the blur brush, which is my favorite brush, to go ahead and contour my nose. And I'm just going to go ahead, use that NBG again, and we're just going to go ahead and apply that on the top of my nose to really add nice structure to our nose and create a beautiful natural nose contour. This really just looks like my nose is naturally like this. It has a really soft natural shadow, which I absolutely love. Taking that same exact shade, and I'm also going to add a little bit more depth into my crease as well, because I want to glam this up a little bit more. So you can use Demi as eyeshadow as well. I like using this kind of like as a natural soft smoky eye, where it almost looks like my eye naturally creates these colors. And it's just very, very light. It's not going to be like your typical makeup application where you're just building it on up and up and up. You don't want it to show any texture. If it starts showing texture, you've applied way too much. That's what I love about these brushes too, is they're so fluffy, so they don't pick up too much product. They pick up the right amount. Then taking that NR shade just to add some warmth into my crease, because I like that natural warm finish. And then just take that Y01 shade and I put that on my eyelid just to cancel out any of the dark shadows on my eyelid and to really make it pop. I really like doing this because I do have a lot of color on my eyelid naturally, so this just kind of gives a more brighter and awake look. Then we're going to take that NB+1 shade, and I'm going to actually take my spot brush, use the smaller side just to go ahead and define our outer corner a little bit more, but just taking a very little bit at a time. If I find that I pick up way too much, I like using the fluffier side of the brush just to go ahead and blend that out and make sure that it looks nice and natural and seamless, because again, we don't want it to look like there's any texture to this makeup application. So once I'm satisfied with that, how that looks, I take that NB+1 shade and I actually went in with my line brush and used that as eyeliner. It creates a beautiful soft liner look without being too harsh, without showing texture, and it lasts all day long, which is what I love about this makeup. Making sure that you just use the smallest bit is going to help with longevity of your makeup, and you don't need to set it, you don't need to touch it up. It'll last all day long. So I'm just going to go ahead and line my eyes, and once I have it to the desired shape that I want, I just go over it really quickly with the blur brush just to go ahead and soften that up a little bit more. And then once we have done that, we're going to go ahead and finish off the face. So I'm going to go ahead and take that same sculpting shade just to add a little bit of a natural contour to my lips. And then we're going to go ahead and fill in the lips with that same color that we put on our cheek. And I have some excess blue in my lip, so I like using usually something that has a little bit of an orange undertone just to go ahead and filter that out and to really even out my top lip with my bottom lip, because my bottom lip is a little bit more pink while my top lip is a little bit more blue. So then I like taking the gloss or the balm, depending on how much of a shine I like, and just finishing off, putting that on my high points. This is absolutely gorgeous. And then we're going to finish off the look and glamify a little bit more with a little bit of a red tone gloss. I just find that this just really makes the look very nice and glamorous. And I am going to apply some half lashes. I find that half lashes look very natural and really elongate the eyes, and it creates that beautiful foxy shape that I like sometimes, that I just feel that makes the look a lot more sultry. Then we're going to finish off the look with some mascara. I always put on mascara all the time. This is my favorite mascara. This is from Thrive Cosmetics. It really does a good job at combining both of your lashes together and just really adding that extra pigment that we need for our eyelashes. You can see how much of a difference the eyelashes are making, and this is just a half lash once again. And then once we have done that, you can see here the difference between the two, and this is the finished look. I hope you enjoyed, and if you need a color match with Demi, please make sure to comment the word makeup and I will gladly match you.